My funeral procession was extremely long. Swords and summoning banners covered the sky, blocking out half the capital's sunlight. Shi Yang was a good emperor, but not a good husband. He respected me, enshrining me like a bodhisattva on the phoenix throne, yet never gave me a shred of warmth. Even when Zhao Yi's cat fell ill, it could make him look worried and distressed. But me, even until I died from illness, he only thought it was a minor ailment from the changing seasons. He even gently caressed my memorial tablet. Consider this getting what you wished for. In your next life, don't enter an imperial family again. With the Son of Heaven's wish, I truly came back to life, returning to the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. The Empress Dowager asked me what reward I wanted. In my previous life, I had asked for a bestowed marriage. This life, by imperial decree, in response to the Empress Dowager, this subject only asks for a pink kingfisher Zan feather cap inlaid with pearls and 9 Zan-tailed phoenix crown. As my words fell, the originally harmonious atmosphere in the hall froze for a moment. The brightness in the Empress Dowager's eyes dimmed slightly, ultimately transforming into a soft sigh, carrying a few traces of imperceptible regret. Very well. She waved her hand, signaling the palace attendants beside her to bring me that phoenix crown placed in the brocade box. I had thought tonight I could witness a wonderful marriage match. It seems this old woman was overthinking. She didn't spell out her later words, but which of the assembled princes and nobles wasn't sharp as a tact, and they all heard the subtext. The Empress Dowager had favored the idea of me and Crown Prince Shi Yang becoming a wedded pair. After all, in terms of family background, talent, and looks, Shi Yang and I are extremely well matched. Besides, my affection for him has long ceased to be a secret. I lowered my eyelashes, respectfully received that heavy brocade box, kowtowed in gratitude, then returned to my seat in an unhurried manner. I didn't look at Shi Yang. The banquet continued. Songs and dances flourished. Wine cups clinked. After 3 rounds of drinks, when the atmosphere was at its liveliest, the Empress Dowager spoke again. Her gaze circled around the Seedzen, finally landing on the seaway of the Minister of Personnel's family, the second young lady of the minister's residence. I see she is also a dignified and well-mannered good child. The Empress Dowager smiled warmly, turning toward Shi Yang. Yanger, what do you think? Shi Yang, whose name was called, set down his wine cup and stood to bow. His expression was calm, showing neither joy nor anger, only responding indifferently. I'll leave it entirely to Imperial Grandmother to decide. He showed not a trace of dissatisfaction. That is right. I'm not the only woman in this world who matches his family background. Without me, naturally there will be someone else to become his crown princess. When the birthday banquet ended, night had already fallen deep. I followed my parents out of the palace together, speechless the whole way. Returning to my own courtyard, I dismissed all the servants and opened that brocade box alone. Moonlight spilled through the window lattice, illuminating that phoenix crown until it shimmered with flowing light. The pink jade feathers are delicately gorgeous. The pearls embedded on the 9 phoenix tails are plump and lustrous. The craftsmanship exquisitely superb. My fingertips brush across the cool pearl strings, and in a trance, memories from my past life surge forth like a tide. Shi Yang's beloved Luo Zhaoyi had once taken a liking to this phoenix crown, but by that time, I had already given it away as a return gift at my own birthday banquet to Princess Zhaohua, who came to offer congratulations. Facing Luo Zhaoyi's request, I could only politely refuse. Unable to swallow her anger, she seized the moment when I turned around on the steps of the Imperial Garden and viciously pushed me down. That fall left me bedridden for days. When Shi Yang came to see me, I was enduring excruciating pain in my abdomen. Yet, he was making excuses for Luo Zhaoyi. She is young. It is inevitable she acts without restraint. Your Majesty the Empress is magnanimous, so please forgive her this once. I couldn't believe my own ears. I was already pregnant at that time, and the imperial physician said the fetus was unstable. That push directly took the life of the child in my womb and left me with no hope of ever becoming a mother again in this lifetime. I never laid a hand on her from start to finish. It was she who harbored malicious intent, and do I not even have the right to punish her? My voice trembled from weakness. Shi Yang's brows furrowed, and he blurted out, "Isn't all this your own doing? You knew full well she loved these luxurious things. Yet you deliberately gave the phoenix crown to Zhaohua, right in front of her Zan. Wasn't it because you harbored resentment toward her?" I was completely stunned, feeling cold all over. He seemed to regret his own loose tongue as well, his expression somewhat uncomfortable. Dropping the line "rest well," he hurriedly left. Over the following days, perhaps out of compensation, he bestowed many treasures upon my palace. But these rewards only stirred discontent in consort Luo Zhaoyi's heart. She went around telling people, who knows if my pregnancy was real or fake. She also said that women like me from aristocratic families had the deepest schemes, and it was hard to guarantee I wasn't deliberately using a non-existent pregnancy to set her up. When these words reached my ears, I forced myself to get up from bed despite my illness, and ordered people to drag her to my palace gates, rewarding her with a thorough and solid beating. When Shi Yang rushed over in fury, consort Luo Zhaoyi's lower body was already covered in blood, barely clinging to life. He was so angry his eyes turned red, and for the first time he raised his voice to rebuke me. But I merely leaned against the soft pillow, speaking with an indifferent expression. Consort Luo Zhaoyi comes from common folk, lacking proper guidance, and doesn't have the deep scheming of aristocratic women like me, so she doesn't understand the principle that disaster comes from the mouth. Since your majesty cannot bear to discipline her, I, as empress, can only discipline her on your behalf. My words left Shi Yang's face ashen with anger. He stared at me for a long while, finally squeezing out a sentence through gritted teeth. Good, very good, Zan disciplining on my behalf. Since the empress has such energy, then reflect properly in Kuning Palace. Without my decree, you are not to step 1 foot outside the palace gates. He stormed off with a flick of his sleeves, and from then on, treated me with extreme coldness. I had no desire to repair the relationship between us that was already full of cracks. After the miscarriage, my mood was deeply melancholic. My health deteriorated day by day, and before long I fell gravely ill and died. Upon hearing the news of my death, Shi Yang froze for a moment in the imperial study, then asked the eunuch who came to report. The empress was already this seriously ill. After all, he had always thought I was merely weak from the miscarriage, with a minor seasonal ailment on top of that. Yes, he never cared about me, so he never inquired about my condition. On the contrary, when that Persian cat raised by consort Luo fell ill, he personally watched over the imperial physician brewing medicine, his brow furrowed with worry. After my death, my spirit lingered in the palace. I saw him hold an extremely grand funeral for me, saw him posthumously honor me as Empress Yao Xianchun. I also saw that on a quiet snowy night, he sat alone in Kuning Palace, gently stroking my memorial tablet, murmuring to himself, "You could say you got what you wanted. In your next life, don't enter an imperial family again." Got what I wanted. What I sought was never the honor of being the mother of the nation, but the warmth between husband and wife. It was he who refused to give it all along. So after rebirth, I took the opportunity to ask for this phoenix crown instead. In this life, I will never enter the palace again. Within 3 days, the Empress Dowager's decree came down, and the second young lady of the Minister of Personnel's residence, Lin Wanyan, was appointed as the crown princess. When the news arrived, my mother was selecting newly made fabric for me. Hearing the news, she paused her movements, a trace of regret appearing between her brows. With our Ayuan's character and appearance, the position of crown princess should rightfully be yours. She sighed, and then took my hand to examine me carefully. With the crown prince's character, he would be more than good enough for you. Listening to her words, my eyes felt a bit hot. Whether in my past life or this one, my mother never thought I was inferior to anyone. In her heart, I was always the best. After I died in my previous life, my parents pieced together from others' accounts all the grievances I had suffered in the palace. My father, who had always been upright, rigid, and valued propriety above all, for the first time disregarded the distinction between ruler and subject, and reprimanded Xiang in court, angering Xiang so much that he dismissed the court session on the spot. When I was young, they always taught me to know the rules and observe propriety, to be a dignified and composed young lady of a noble family. But for my sake, they even dared to defy the imperial will. Thinking of these things, my heart burned with warmth, and I softly said to my mother, marrying into royal or noble families isn't necessarily that great. If I'm to marry, I'll only marry someone who truly treats me well and puts me first. Moreover, he must be handsome and of good character. My mother was amused by my last sentence and couldn't help but smile. She tapped my forehead with her fingertip and said teasingly, "You sure know how to plan things out." From then on, she never mentioned anything about Xiang and me in front of me again. In the days that followed, I rarely felt so relaxed. The peach blossoms in the outskirts of the capital were in full bloom, so I took my maidservants out to enjoy the flowers. After playing for most of the day, the weather changed on our way back and dark clouds gathered and raindrops as big as beans came crashing down. We drove the carriage hurriedly, but the rain grew fiercer and fiercer, making it hard to see the road ahead clearly. There happened to be an inn by the roadside that looked quite elegant, so I had the coachman stop, planning to go in and take shelter from the rain. Several swords and bearing guards stood outside the inn, their postures upright, but the rain was too heavy. Neither my attendants nor I looked carefully, and we hurriedly entered the inn's main hall with our umbrellas. After entering, I realized the atmosphere was somewhat unusual. The main hall was very quiet, with only 2 people sitting at a table in the corner. One of them was none other than Crown Prince Xiang, and sitting across from him was the newly appointed Crown Princess, second Miss Lin Wanyan of the Minister's Manor. I paused in my steps. My whole body froze for a moment. Xiang also saw me. His gaze lingered on me for a breath, his expression unreadable. I quickly came back to my senses and stepped forward to bow properly. "This subject's daughter greets your highness the Crown Prince." "Greets the Crown Princess." Xiang nodded slightly and said nothing more. Lin Wanyan, on the other hand, smiled at me warmly. I didn't look any further and walked straight to the counter, asking the shopkeeper for an upper room and some hot water. After changing clothes, I sat by the window listening to the rain, but my mood was no longer as leisurely as before. Before long, there was a knock on the door. My maid Chuya walked in with a strange expression on her face, holding a moon's and white brocade cloak in her hands. "Miss," she spoke, her tone filled with confusion. "This was sent by someone from His Highness the Crown Prince's side. He said that His Highness saw you were lightly dressed and feared you'd catch a cold from the rain." My brows furrowed slightly. Xiang and Lin Wanyan were already betrothed. This gesture was crossing the line both emotionally and rationally. Chuya clearly also felt it was inappropriate and added in a low voice. This servant already declined, saying it wasn't proper. But the guard by His Highness, the Crown Prince's side, insisted on leaving the cloak. And at that time, Miss Lin's expression had already turned very unpleasant. Understanding the situation, I picked up that brocade cloak and turned to head downstairs. The rain had stopped, and the damp air outside the inn carried the freshness of earth. In the main hall, Lin Wanyan was nowhere to be seen. Only Xiang sat alone by the window, holding a cup of clear tea in his hand, his posture leisurely. He heard footsteps, lifted his eyelids to look at me, his gaze falling on my somewhat thin clothing, his tone revealing no ripples. "You got caught in the rain just now. Why didn't you put on another layer before coming down? What if you catch a cold?" I walked to the table across from him and laid the moonzan white cloak flat on the table surface. "This subject has no relation to your highness. Even if I caught a cold, it would have nothing to do with your highness." My voice was cold, without the slightest fluctuation. "Your highness should keep this cloak for second Miss Lin instead." Having said that, I curtsied and turned to leave. "Shen Yuan." He suddenly called my full name, his voice carrying a trace of barely perceptible tension. "Why must you avoid me like a viper?" I looked straight into his deep eyes and said word by word, "Since your highness is already betrothed, you should understand what propriety means. This is the responsibility of being a husband, and also the most basic respect for the crown princess." Shi Yang's expression darkened. He stared at me, as if trying to see something on my face. "That day at the birthday banquet, why didn't you ask Imperial Grandmother to grant us marriage? You clearly have feelings for me, and Imperial Grandmother had that intention too, as long as you spoke up." "Because your highness doesn't have feelings for me," I interrupted him, stating frankly. "A marriage forced into being is nothing but mutual torment. In the end, it only becomes a resentful couple, then what is the point?" I thought of my previous life, thought of that cunning palace that confined me for a lifetime. I held the phoenix seal, was the mother of the nation, the virtuous empress praised by all. But in the depths of midnight dreams, only I myself knew how unhappy I truly was. My husband never loved me. My child left me. I lingered on my sick bed, withering day by day, yet still had to be magnanimous toward the very culprit. Why should I? Just at this moment, the sky that had just cleared turned gloomy again, with several dark clouds gathering once more. I withdrew my thoughts, concealed all emotions in my eyes, and bid him farewell again. "It is getting late. This subject should return home. The mountain path is slippery. I'll see you off," Shi Yang said. Just as I was about to refuse, a figure stumbled into the inn from outside Zan. It was my family's coachman. His face was full of anxiety. "Miss, this is bad. The carriage wheel is stuck in the mud and won't come out no matter what. It seems it is cracked too." My heart skipped a beat. Instinctively, I looked up and met Shi Yang's gaze. There was no hint of anything in those dark eyes of his. Yet, a gentle smile played at the corners of his lips as he spoke again. "It seems I'll have to see you off myself." My brows furrowed tightly as I pondered a strategy, when suddenly an unrestrained and flamboyant voice came from outside the inn, calling out my full name loud and clear. "Shen Yuan, are you hiding in there?" I looked toward the sound and saw a young gentleman in a dark red robe striding through the door. His features were striking, handsome in an aggressively captivating way. Upon seeing me, he even clicked his tongue, his tone carrying a familiar complaint. "Since you're here, why didn't you answer? You made me search all over." Seeing him, I only felt my temples throbbing with a headache, and said helplessly, "Xiao Qian, why aren't you staying at the manor? What are you doing running here for no good reason?" Xiao Qian raised his chin, pointing to the particularly imposing carriage stopped on the official road behind him. "Speaking matter Zan of Dan factly, your parents saw the weather turning bad and worried you couldn't make it back. So they sent me to pick you up." Shi Yang, who had been standing to the side, watched quietly. He spoke, his voice steady. Zan Yuan, who is this?" Before I could organize my words, Xiao Qian had already taken the initiative, cupping his hands in salute toward Shi Yang, his manner quite proper. "Greetings to your highness, the crown prince. My father is Xiao Yuan, who has been in Jiangyan all this time, and only recently returned to the capital to visit relatives. It is only natural that your highness doesn't recognize me." Shi Yang's gaze swept over Xiao Qian before falling back on my face, his tone indifferent as he spoke. "So, you're a young master of the Xiao family. Though we haven't seen each other in years, there are still proper boundaries between men and women that should be observed." Upon hearing this, Xiao Qian's lips curved into a smile, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. "That is not something your highness needs to worry about." He changed the subject, speaking with implication. "When I was coming up the mountain earlier, I saw the Lin family's second young miss going down the mountain alone with fury written all over her face. Now that is something your highness should really be concerned about." The atmosphere in the inn's main hall suddenly grew tense. I hurriedly reached out to grab Xiao Qian's sleeve and dragged him outside. "Since you came to pick me up, let's head back quickly. Mom and Dad must be getting anxious." Xiao Qian followed my pull and walked out, casting a provocative look at Shi Yang as he passed by him. I didn't dare look back, just pulled him along as we quickly left the inn. Behind us, Shi Yang remained standing there quietly, his expression revealing neither joy nor anger. On the way back, the carriage traveled smoothly along the rain-soaked official road. Xiao Qian's mouth never stopped, going on and on criticizing Shi Yang the entire way. Look at that sanctimonious appearance of his Dan, you can tell at a glance he is no good. His fiancée is still outside, yet he has the leisure to fawn over other girls at the inn. He is truly harboring sinister intentions. Thank goodness you didn't marry him, or you'd really suffer. I listened to his rapid fire complaints, but my thoughts drifted far away. I recalled that at this time in my previous life, the Empress Dowager had already arranged my marriage to Shi Yang, and the wedding date had been set. Xiao Qian had also returned from Jiangnan and was temporarily staying at my home, but back then, he was always distant and aloof toward me. Even when we met, he would only nod politely, never as close as he is today. Later, when I married Shi Yang, he sent a gift of money so staggeringly large it startled my mother. At the time, I felt it was highly improper. After all, though we addressed each other as cousins, we were only distantly related relatives barely connected by blood, having merely played together for a while in childhood. But when I intended to return that gift money to him, I learned he had already departed back to Jiangnan. The next time I heard news of him, I was already gravely ill. I heard that he died abroad while trying to obtain a rare medicine from the western regions for the woman he loved. When I heard about it at the time, I felt a pang of regret in my heart, wondering what kind of woman could make him so recklessly devoted. Little did he know whether his beloved, upon hearing this tragic news, would grieve for him. Since that day they parted at the inn, Lin Wanyan had caught a cold. Her illness lingered, and her wedding date with Shi Yang was postponed again and again. As a result, the minds of the ladies from various families became active once more. I also received an invitation to a flower dan viewing banquet from the Duke of Angguo's manor. But I simply set the invitation aside, having no intention of going. I had more important matters to attend to. I changed into ordinary clothes, taking only someone with me, and rode in an inconspicuous carriage to the west side of the city. After much inquiry, I finally found Luo Zhaoyi at an alley entrance. The vicious woman who would become arrogant from imperial favor in the future was now just a young woman making a living on the street. She wore a simple hairpin and plain skirt, her features carrying a touch of delicate beauty, as she lowered her head and deftly wrapped wontons. I gave her a silver ingot and bought out her entire wonton stall. She was clearly stunned for a moment. Then a gleam of delighted surprise burst forth in her eyes as she nimbly cooked a bowl for me. The wontons were quickly served, steaming hot with an enticing aroma, but I didn't pick up my chopsticks, only calmly asked her, "You're so young. Why are you running a stall here?" She seemed not to expect me to ask this, and was startled again. Then her eyes reddened as she said in a low voice, "In answer to the young lady's question, my parents and relatives have all passed away, and there is no one else left at home. Since I only know how to make this one kind of food, I thought I'd set up a stall here to earn some silver so I can return to my old home in Suzhou." After listening, I said nothing more, only had Qiu place a pouch full of silver in front of her. "This reward money is enough for you to return home and settle down." She was completely stunned, staring at that heavy pouch of reward money. Only after a long while did she react, excitedly kneeling down and kowtowing repeatedly in thanks. But I didn't look at her again and simply turned to leave. It wasn't until we had walked a long distance that Qiu whispered in my ear, "Miss, the people have already been arranged. As soon as she steps outside the capital's boundaries, she'll be robbed and killed by bandits in the mountains." I nodded and boarded the carriage back to the manor. I've never been someone with a magnanimous nature. In my previous life, when I rolled down the steps of the imperial garden, the twisting pain and despair from my abdomen were enough for me to remember for 2 lifetimes. In the following days, I felt inexplicably restless and uneasy. It wasn't until the maidservant reported to me that the matter had been resolved that my taut nerves finally relaxed, and I fell seriously ill. During the days you were ill, you really worried that child Qian to death. Mother tucked in the corner of my blanket with her handkerchief, her tone full of emotion. He busied himself running around, traveling overnight to the Debi temple outside the city, to pray for a peace talisman for you, and personally, supervised the imperial physician brewing medicine. He wished he could lie in that sicked in your place. I listened quietly, my heart a jumble of mixed feelings. All these things, Xiao Qian had never mentioned a single word to me. After recovering from my illness, when I saw Xiao Qian again, he looked me up and down several times, and finally let out a long sigh of relief. Finally better. If you'd stayed sick any longer, I would have thought all the doctors in the capital were quacks. He didn't mention a word about what he'd done for me, but instead, pulled out several brocade boxes from his chest, like presenting treasures. While you were sick, the jewelry shops in the capital came out with quite a few new styles. I was afraid you'd be unhappy if you missed them, so I took it upon myself to buy them all for you. I didn't look at those jewelry pieces. My gaze only fixed steadily on his face as I asked directly, Xiao Qian, what exactly did you come to the capital to do this time? The wind blew past, and the pear tree's leaves rustled. The person who had been so spirited just moments ago suddenly flushed red in the cheeks, and his speech became somewhat stuttered. You? Why are you asking this? His eyes darted away, not daring to meet mine. That appearance was completely different from his usual flamboyant and carefree self. But even if he didn't say it, I already knew. Mother had already told me everything. Uncle and Aunt Xiao were very fond of me and intended to have Xiao Qian marry me as his wife. My parents also felt that since the two families knew each other well and they had watched me grow up, I definitely wouldn't suffer any grievances if I married over. So they were happy to see it happen. Xiao Qian's visit this time was ostensibly to visit relatives, but in reality, it was to propose marriage. So that is how it was. In my previous life, that Jiazan droppingly generous gift of money he sent wasn't a congratulatory gift at all, and it was a betrothal gift. And when I was seriously ill, those precious medicinal herbs worth a fortune that he had someone send from Jiangnan. On my birthday, those rare antiques he sent from thousands of miles away. Every single thing wasn't the courtesy between distant relatives I had imagined, but rather his feelings that he never spoke aloud. Compared to those grand yet not necessarily sincere promises, this kind of concern hidden in the details and spanning thousands of miles is far more touching. The genuine affection Shen Yuan missed in her previous life was finally seen by her in this life. The realization that Summonin has been secretly loving me all along. I looked at his handsome features, left with only one question in my heart. We haven't seen each other for many years. We only played together for a few days when we were young. When did you develop feelings for me? When Xiao Qian heard me ask this, he relaxed instead. He smiled, his previous awkward appearance disappeared, and his tone became gentle. The first glance. I was stunned, he continued. To be honest, before coming, I really didn't have any particular thoughts. I just came to take a look since my elders were pressing me urgently. But after arriving, the first moment I saw you at the manor gate, I didn't want to leave anymore. His expression became somewhat distant. I even had a very long dream. In the dream, I arrived a step too late, and you had already married the crown prince. But you weren't happy at all. Your whole person was sickly and listless. And in the end, after waking up, my heart felt so blocked and uncomfortable. Fortunately, it was just a dream. You didn't marry the crown prince, and I didn't come too late. His gaze was burning hot, like a ball of fire, almost melting me. He didn't say any flowery words. He simply laid his sincere heart bare before me. But I hesitated. I thought of my previous life when I died in the deep palace, unable to see my parents one last time until death. That bones and deep regret and remorse, Dan. I didn't want to experience it again. I can't marry far away. I lowered my eyelids and said softly, I want to stay close to my parents. How is that difficult? Xiao Qian spoke without hesitation. I'll write a letter right now and have my father move the entire Xiao family to the capital. He said this and truly turned to leave, his steps swift as if he was going to find brush and ink. I stood there stunned, feeling a bit dazed. I seemed to haven't agreed to him yet, right? But Xiao Qian's ability to take action was truly astonishing. After just a few days, a reply came from the Xiao family in Jiangnan, saying the entire clan had already packed their belongings. They would depart immediately and could arrive in the capital before long. At the same time, news also came from the palace. The marriage between Crown Prince Xi Yang and second Miss Lin Wanyan of the Lin family was called off. It was heard that after Lin Wanyan got caught in the rain that day, the cold invaded her body, and her illness grew increasingly severe, with medicine proving ineffective. The Empress Dowager was deeply worried, so she had the Imperial Astronomy Bureau match their horoscopes. The Imperial Astronomy Bureau's verdict was, Miss Lin's fortune is meager, and her fate is shallow. She likely cannot bear the weighty responsibility of future empress. When the news arrived, Xiao Qian was peeling tangerines for me at my side. After hearing it, he rolled his eyes disdainfully and muttered under his breath, "What meager fortune and shallow fate? I think it is clearly that guy Xi Yang who brings misfortune to his wife." I laughed. "If your father hears this, he'll probably punish you to copy the family rules again." Xiao Qian didn't care at all though, and held a plump tangerine segment to my lips, snorting, "Let him punish me then. I just think Xi Yang is no good." Seeing me eat the tangerine, he continued peeling another one. Chin raised high, looking extremely pleased with himself. "In my dream after you married him, you were frowning all day long. How could you be as happy as you are now when you're with me?" Looking at his proud expression, my heart couldn't help but soften. A few days ago, I had already agreed to the marriage arrangement with the Xiao family. After all, Xiao Qian was truly sincere. Even though my previous life was filled with misery and hardship, I still longed for such a genuine heart. Moreover, after the engagement, Xiao Qian treated me really well. Not only did he come to see me every day, he also gave me many precious things, from pearls of the Eastern Sea to gemstones from the Western regions. That momentum of his Dan, he wished he could empty out the entire Xiao family estate and present it all before me. During this period, I've been living quite freely and happily. When Xi Yang came looking for me, I was trying on my wedding dress in my room. Hearing the soft sound of the door opening, I thought it was a maid bringing in accessories. Without turning back, I just held up my skirt and turned a circle in front of the mirror, asking with a smile, "Chu Yu, do you think this waist is cinched just right?" No one answered from behind. Sensing something was wrong, I turned around, only to meet a pair of stunned eyes. The smile froze on my lips. I frowned, drawing the fiery red wedding dress tighter around myself, my tone cold. "What business does Your Highness the Crown Prince have here?" Xi Yang acted as if he hadn't heard my questioning at all. He stared fixedly at the wedding dress I was wearing, his gaze surging with complex emotions I couldn't understand. After a long while, his Adam's apple bobbed as he forced out a few words. "This is how it should be." He stepped forward. "Jian Yuan, you should have been marrying me." My heartbeat suddenly skipped a beat, and the blood throughout my body seemed to freeze. So he had also returned with memories of his past life. I forced myself to calm down, my voice devoid of any ripple. "Your Highness, please mind your words. I have already settled on a marriage arrangement and have nothing more to do with you." "Shen Yuan," he stubbornly called out my name. Just then, my mother heard the commotion and hurried over. Seeing the scene in the room, her expression immediately darkened as she questioned Xi Yang. "Why has the Crown Prince barged into my daughter's boudoir without permission?" My mother's voice pulled Xi Yang back to his senses somewhat, and he reined in his exposed emotions. He respectfully bowed to my mother and spoke in a low voice. "Madam, Jian Yuan and I actually share a karmic bond from past and present lives. He must have carefully groomed himself today, wearing an ink tan-colored brocade robe that made his features appear even more handsome. but the lingering gloomy aura surrounding him ruined this deliberate air of respectability. No wonder He hadn't been having a good time lately. After breaking off the engagement with Lin Wanyan, he stubbornly refused to finalize a new crown princess. The empress was anxious as hell. After all, His Majesty was gravely ill, and the other princes were all eyeing the position like tigers. But Shi Yang, as if possessed by some evil spirit, actually told the empress that he had already been married in his dreams. He even said that his wife was gentle and obedient, managed the household perfectly, and never argued with him. When the noble ladies of the capital heard about this, they all gossiped privately, saying the crown prince didn't want a living, breathing wife, but rather a Buddha statue to place in a temple. Who would have thought that I was the Buddha he spoke of? My mother, after hearing his words, her expression changed several times, but ultimately, considering his status, she barely maintained her courtesy. Your Highness must be overworked lately, causing confusion and delirium. I will not tell others about today's matter, but please leave quickly, Your Highness. This was already a blatant order to leave, but Shi Yang acted as if he heard nothing. He stepped past my mother, his gaze burning as it locked onto me, each word clear and distinct. We are fated across past and present lives. Shen Yuan, tell me, when you were so willing to be my wife in the past life, why are you marrying someone else in this life? I was so angry at his words that I laughed. Shi Yang truly was arrogant to his very bones. He once used his power to oppress me, making me swallow all my grievances, yet now he still puts on an aggrieved look, questioning why I won't marry him again. Your Highness is heaven's favored son? I spoke, my voice iced and cold. No matter which woman marries you, she would say she got what she wished for. I paused, then continued. As for the past, what is done is done. Since Your Highness the Crown Prince never liked me, why bother pestering me now? It only makes you a laughingstock to others. That is not true. Shi Yang immediately refuted, his tone urgent. I do like you. Yuan before. I thought I didn't like you, but later I realized it was my heart stirring without knowing it. As if to prove something, he hastily added, after you left, I executed consort Luo Zhao. I avenged you. Listening to this, I only felt nauseous. That self-righteous affection was the most revolting thing. Thinking this, I said it out loud. Actually, Your Highness only loves yourself. Even if I married you again, I would still end up the same way. What you miss is just how I obeyed in everything, and never caused you trouble. You feel I'm different from before now, but you're just not used to it. I looked at him, word by word stripping away his hypocritical facade. Even if there is no consort Luo in the future, there will be consort Wang or consort Li. Your harem will never lack people. Shi Yang's face turned pale inch by inch. His lips trembled as he murmured, that is not true. But he couldn't utter a single word of rebuttal. In the end, he left in complete disarray, utterly dejected and lost. After Shi Yang left, Mother looked at me with shock and uncertainty, saying in a low voice, has His Highness the Crown Prince truly gone mad? Coming here and spouting all that nonsense. Then, as if joking, yet with a hint of cautious probing, she asked me, Dian Yuan, did you really marry the Crown Prince in your past life? Hearing the inquiry in her tone, I merely smiled and brushed the matter aside. What past life and present life? It is just crazy talk. Do you believe it too, Mother? Only then did Mother breathe a sigh of relief and stopped asking. But Shi Yang seemed to have completely fallen into it. He refused to marry any other woman as his consort, and even went so far as to absurdly have people from the Imperial Astronomy Bureau calculate birth charts, concluding that my fortune was deep and profound, worthy of being crown princess. But I was already betrothed, and no matter how profound my fortune was, it had nothing to do with him. Instead, his series of absurd actions thoroughly angered His Majesty, who issued an edict confining him to the Eastern Palace. Xiao Qian has been running around outside recently, personally supervising the craftsmen and preparing all matters for our wedding. Only now did he learn about the turmoil that occurred in the capital. He paced back and forth in the room angrily. I knew that bastard Xiang would bring misfortune to his wife. A Yuan, you have such deep blessings, yet in my dream you were afflicted by him into that sickly appearance. You must keep your eyes wide open and never let yourself be deceived by his smooth talk. I couldn't help but laugh. All right. All right. All right. I won't trust him. I'll only trust you. Only then was Xiao Qian satisfied. The gloom in his eyes dissipated, revealing a bright smile once more. Afterward, my wedding with Xiao Qian proceeded smoothly as expected. 10 miles of red dowry, phoenix crown and bridal veil Zan. He welcomed me through the door with the most grand ceremony. During the wedding vows, he held my hand tightly, as if afraid I would run away. At the same time, Xi Yang was confined to the Eastern Palace. He was only released after my wedding. The situation in the capital changed dramatically, just like in my previous life. His Majesty fell ill, his health declining day by day. Several princes who had already come of age could no longer restrain themselves and raised troops to force the palace. In my previous life, I faced all of this together with Xi Yang. I devised strategies for him, and my father stabilized people's hearts for him in the court. So without lifting a finger, he quelled the rebellion and ascended the throne as emperor. But this time, he doesn't have me. Xi Yang committed many more absurd acts. Not only did he fail to effectively suppress his brother's rebellion, but he was also reprimanded by His Majesty, who was ill in bed, for his mishandling of affairs. Many in the court were sizing up the situation behind the scenes, and even the factions that originally supported him began to waver. This time, Xi Yang lost to the third prince. The palace city was breached, and the Eastern Palace fell. The Empress left Xi Yang a secret escape route, leading out of the city, and it was the last way out she had prepared for her son. But when Xi Yang reached the exit of the secret passage, he saw me holding a lantern, standing quietly by the roadside. The night wind lifted the hem of my skirt, and the lamplight cast flickering shadows on my face. Seeing me, Xi Yang's dim eyes burst with radiance, and his expression lit up with joy. He thought I had come to follow him. After all, we were husband and wife in our previous life. If I had no feelings for him, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to request marriage to him back then. He looked at me, his voice hoarse with the relief of surviving disaster and filled with hope. Ah, Yuan, I knew you had me in your heart. Don't worry. Once I make my comeback, I will never let you down again. But the next moment, the smile on his face froze, because the dagger in my hand plunged viciously into his chest. The few remaining guards behind him were shocked and furious, wanting to step forward, but were blocked by a rain of arrows shooting out from the forest, falling to the ground one after another. Warm blood splattered onto my hand. Fresh blood gushed from Xiang's mouth. He lowered his head in disbelief to look at his chest, then raised his eyes to look at me, finally letting out a miserable laugh. You truly do hate me. His body swayed, leaning against the stone wall behind him, asking with a weak breath. But we've already been given another life, so why can't you forgive me? I found it utterly laughable upon hearing this. Who knows if you're sincere or fake? I pulled out the dagger, coldly watching him slide to the ground. Having wronged me, you can only repay with your life. I crouched down softly, adding by his ear. But you won't be lonely either. After all, I've long since killed Luo Zhaoyi and sent her to the Yellow Springs to keep you company. Xi Yang's eyes suddenly widened, his pupils filled with shock and unwillingness, before finally losing all their light completely. Amidst the blood covering the ground, my hands gripping the dagger trembled slightly. At this moment, a pair of warm arms embraced me from behind. Xiao Qian carefully held me in his arms, wrapped me in his cloak, and said softly by my ear, "It is all right, Aijian Yuan. It is all over." Afterwards, the third prince ascended the throne as emperor. Because of my merit in executing the traitor, I received a generous reward. Only then did my parents learn what an earth-shattering deed I had accomplished. Scared pale in the face, repeatedly feeling frightened in hindsight, pulling me and asking all sorts of questions, fearing I was hurt somewhere. Only Xiao Qian took pride in this. Whenever someone asked about it, he would say with great satisfaction, "How did you know? My wife has the merit of supporting the dragon." Others couldn't stand his cheerful appearance and kept shaking their heads, telling him to wise up. "Young Master Xiao, you'd better be careful, or one day it'll be you that your wife stabs." Hearing this, Xiao Qian wasn't angry at all. He just said they were jealous that he married such a capable wife, which made those people curse him angrily as a love-dan-brained fool who'd been dazzled by beauty. Xiao Qian paid no mind to these criticisms, and instead, happily took me south of the Yangtze River to tour the mountains and waters. The boat glided on the water, the scenery on both banks like a painting. He peeled a crystalline lychee and fed it to my lips, looking at me with smiling eyes. I opened my mouth and took it in, that sweet freshness spreading from the tip of my tongue all the way to the bottom of my heart. In this lifetime, my wishes were finally fulfilled. After Xiang learned that Shen Yuan had long ago sent people to eliminate concubine Luo Zhao, what would be the most likely reaction? A complete breakdown, resenting himself for being slow to realize B, even more obsessive, believing Shen Yuan to be ruthless and cruel C. Sudden awakening, admitting he never truly loved Shen Yuan. Choosing to let go D, blame others, and attribute the failure to Luo Zhaoyi's scheming.